Hi guys, today we are joined by Caroline Essame. She is the founder of an amazing company called CreateCATT, and it is a social enterprise that promotes the importance of creativity and play in human development, particularly for those children who learn differently and those at risk. She's also the pioneer and founder of a model called the developmental play model, which she will go into in our chat together, which is a holistic approach that brings best global practice in child development to the children who need it the most, with projects in India and a few other places around the world. Hi Caroline, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And you're joining us today from
Singapore. On the equator.
Awesome, nice and hot there.
Indeed, and it looks like we're about to have rain any minute. So if I look out the window and you hear thunder and lightning, it's a tropical rainstorm.
Oh, I miss those. I grew up in Thailand for a little while, and those are my favorite times of year, the rainy season, going swimming outside, which maybe wasn't the safest practice, but yeah, they're awesome, those storms.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? They are. Got a lot of passion and power.
Yeah. So you're a play consultant?
I'm an occupational therapist, an arts and play therapist, and an educator.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a clinician by background, and also a mother of 3 boys, and then I do a lot of training and education as well.
Oh, great. And you work with a company called?
So my company is called CreateCATT, which stands for Creative Arts Therapy and Creative Arts Therapy and Training. It's a sort of umbrella company, but our main passion and product is something called developmental play.
And what is that?
It's a model for understanding how and why children play, and how as adults we can support children play, we can support children to develop through play. And it brings together my clinical background, my occupational therapy background, my creative arts therapy background, my education experience, my neurobiology background as a clinician, and also my experience as a parent, into a sort of very simple pyramid model that looks at particularly what we call preverbal play, because most of us, when we think about play, we think about what's called higher play, which is imagination, storytelling, being able to build magical worlds. And we forget that actually, before children are able to do that kind of play by about 3 or 4, certainly by 5, lots of other play is happening earlier. And because I'm a clinician, I work with children who learn differently, or maybe have emotional challenges, or who have had a trauma. They often go back into that preverbal, i.e. before language play.
Right.
And we've forgotten about it. If you ask anyone a memory of play, it's generally no younger than 4 years old. Because of our cognitive development, we remember most things from about 4. Does that mean we're not playing before 4? No, it doesn't. So developmental play was really about helping us understand how play begins almost before a child is born. You know, they're rocked in utero, they're sung to. Sometimes parents will tell stories to the unborn infant. So play is beginning very early. But as adults, we've forgotten what it means and how it works. So developmental play is very much a model that helps you understand how children learn from the very beginning of sort of conception and birth, through the medium of play and positive relationships.
Yeah, I didn't think about play being in utero as well.
Well, it's the movement, it's that rhythm. Because I work with quite a lot of children with quite substantial challenges sometimes, I often find myself thinking, maybe with a 4 or 5 year old, going back to really early developmental stages, and you find sort of white music and rocking helps them feel safe and goes back to sort of early development, and then you sort of help them build up. It's basically like rewiring the brain. A lot of my clinical work, that's what I do, following this model, is thinking this is how children develop and grow. If they've got a challenge or something's happened and they're not developing in the right way, let's go back to the foundation skills, strengthen them and build them up. So developmental plays based on a pyramid. The idea, you've got strong foundations, you can build a strong pyramid. A bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes, I was thinking. Yeah. How did you get into this?
Oh, now that's quite a long story in some ways.
I've got my hot chocolate.
You got your hot chocolate. Tuck into your hot chocolate and I'll tell you a story. I mean, I think it's the culmination of my 30 plus years. I used to work in adult psychiatry, with adults who've had challenges, and the challenges have got the better of them. So I've always known from that experience that a lot of the seeds for social and emotional well-being are sown very young. And I've always been interested in creativity, and I think creativity in adulthood has lots of similarities with playfulness in childhood. So it's always been my passion. And then I think when I had my own children, I remember somebody telling me that your children will show you how you learned. And even though I'd studied child development twice in my 2 therapy trainings, it wasn't until I had my own children that I lived it 24/7. And I think my own children were my greatest teachers. And actually watching them develop and grow through play and revisiting all these stages made me realize even more how important it was. So all this experience came together. And then the developmental play model was actually born in work I was doing in rural India. So I was working in a special needs school in rural India where nobody had the kind of trainings that myself and my colleague had. And so I was training parents and teachers in basic child development. And because of my clinical experience, I can see a child and I think, right, got this. And within 5 minutes, I can make recommendations that I know will help them develop because I've had all those years experience. And I thought, how can I get that expertise into a simple, accessible form so that it can go into translation to parents who haven't got the luxury of doing 2 degrees and 5 years to get the expertise. They need it now for their children. So it was really training through a translator in a different culture, trying to get rid of all the fluff we have around it and trying to think, okay, what matters most and how can I help these parents? So it was born from necessity of getting what I felt was best practice in child development to the people who needed it most. So my model was really born for the developing world where they didn't have access to the expertise we have here in Singapore or in the UK or in richer countries. It was born for parents who had children initially with developmental challenges in India so that they could get best advice, a few nuggets of helpful truth that would help them help their children reach their potential.
And what are those nuggets? What are the first steps to this model?
Well, what I will give you a link to, and maybe you can put in at the end here, is the little YouTube movie. Have you seen it about developmental play? It's an animation my animator made. I'll make sure we give a link, but it explains how children grow through this developmental play pyramid. And the bottom of the pyramid is about sensory body play. So the idea, and this is an occupational therapy concept, that we develop through our 8 senses. Now, usually people think about the 5, touch, taste, smell, vision and hearing, but we actually have 3 hidden senses. The vestibular, which is all about balance and feeling grounded, proprioception, which is about our body in space, and then interoception, which is understanding our internal organs, and that's all linked to heartbeat, hunger, feelings and emotions. So that's the foundation, is the sensory body play. And then what I call attachment safety play. And this is about that positive relationship, that nurture of your chief carer, whether that's a parent or an auntie or whoever. And it's interesting, from many of years of my career, that's where I start. You'll have older children coming in and they're struggling at school. I look at them and I realize that some of their senses are not working in the way they should. And even though they function at higher levels, because they've got a challenge on that foundation, it really knocks the development, the pyramid wobbles. So sensory body play is the foundation, and it's all about understanding our bodies. And attachment safety play, those are the foundation of the pyramid, which is really social, emotional, physical and cognitive. Everything is linked with the sort of mind and the body. So that's the foundation. And then the next level is what we call creative explorative play. So once children know how their bodies work and they feel safe, they begin to explore cause and effect and how they can impact on the outside world. And then after that, and this is how we wire the brain. So neurobiologically, I think we all know that children are born with, what do they call it? Soft wired. And they haven't, the neurons really begin as soon as children are born. And this is how, you see through these things, you wire a brain like a sort of beautiful connected tree. But if you miss some of it, you've only got half the tree, or things don't connect in the way they want to, or if your children on the autistic spectrum have a differently developed brain, so you often need to work harder to get that lovely connected wiring. But it's all about relationships and feeling your body. So the third level, I've got a little pyramid, you can find it on the website. We can put all the links on the end as well, if anyone's interested. And there's lots of talks on my YouTube channel as well that explain it in a bit more depth. But what happens once you've realized that you can have an impact on the world through play, and that might just be, hearing when you drop a toy, you make a sound. This is all about cause and effect play, that you can impact on the outside world. And then from that cause and effect play, children move up to meaning making play. And this is, if any of you are familiar with Piaget's work, when they begin to have representational play, and they can make meaning and they compare and contrast. A lot of this was in the first 2 years of life. But because we're not getting language, we don't realize how much children are developing until they can tell us in speech how incredible this cognition and development is. And then the top of the pyramid, level 4, is what we call higher play. That's imagination, social learning, role play, pretending to be other people. The wonderful play I love watching when children are at that higher level, because they play out the world around them, they play out their families, everything they see, they reflect, they learn friendships, they understand emotions. But so much is happening before that, that in a way, developmental play gives you a model to understand what you're seeing before it's connected to language. That's in a sort of nutshell.
That's really interesting. For me, I'm a qualified early years teacher, and I learned through Rye Inspired daycare centres, which are based on play and putting resources in the environment and watching how a child is interacting with them. And this is from as early as 3 months old, seeing how they interact with the different textures under their feet, and how you can see when they put their foot on the floor, how they are feeling the difference between carpet and wood, for example. Yeah, it's very much in line, and I'd love to learn more about your model and put into practice when I'm working with children and observing them. Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, some of the fascinating things that I've seen during my work, because I work in India, I work in the Philippines, I'm based in Singapore, and Singapore is very urban. I mean, New Zealand, I have New Zealand relatives and have been there, and you've got, that beautiful outdoors, you've got a lot of country.
Yeah.
We're a tiny little island here. And even though we're a sort of garden city and we've got lots of nature, it's different nature from the kind of nature you have in New Zealand. I grew up in a farming community in England. So, that lovely, very similar to New Zealand, that lovely outdoors, you made mud pies, you ran through woods, you climbed trees. We don't have that kind of thing here in Singapore. It's very urban, even our parks, a lot of them are level. You can't climb the trees here. It's not encouraged, and also it's full of red ants, which is slightly discouraging as well. So it's a very different environment, and I'm fascinated in how it affects physiology.
Right.
And how people move differently here because they haven't had those different sensory experiences. And working in Asia, where we've got massive urbanization happening and a lot of very big modern cities, it's incredible how it impacts on child development.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And then with the I don't know about you, but I recommend to parents to not put their children in jolly jumpers or things that are going to get in the way of their natural gross motor development. And I can see a significant difference between children who haven't had that in their early years and the children that have, and how their is it the proprioception, which is the awareness in space, and their vestibular system is quite underdeveloped in terms of just climbing up the stairs to a slide, or moving their body through a jungle gym. Children who have been given that space and that time to develop in their own time, they're much less likely to have accidents and hit their heads on a table, or
they know where their body is.
They know where their bodies are. Yeah. And now with the increase of screens coming into play, it's more important now more than ever, I think, for children to really get that opportunity to have that play.
Definitely. And that sort of rough and tumble. I mean, I remember as a mother tossing my children up and down and round with hoots of laughter, lots of engagement, and you're moving them in space. And I think, sometimes parents either aren't available because they're so busy, or they're worried that their children, it's not good for them to do rough and tumble. And I often, with older children, I say, we need to get them moving more in space. Let's go back to those early up and down and round and rocking. And all that engagement is so important. And it's interesting, there's a lot of research being done about the increase in anxiety for children who haven't played enough. And a lot of that is physical. I have a lot of children coming to my clinic, and I look at how they walk into the room and their bodies are scared. And they just haven't had enough movement. And I think post-COVID, because children haven't been able to go out and play, they haven't been able to, we're lucky here in Singapore. I think New Zealand's been quite lucky as well, but a lot of children across the world, in the Philippines, they're still on lockdown. Children haven't been at school for a year.
Oh, wow.
In some areas. And this has huge implications for child development. They're not getting out and moving, and like I say, so much screen time is going to influence hugely core development, sense of your body in space, your visual systems. We're probably going to have more myopia because you need at least an hour and a half of daylight a day to develop the visual system in the early childhood years. So there's huge, I think, ECD is going to be a really important area for checking children catch up, and play is the best way to expose them to the world and give them confidence in it, because it's their language and their way of exploring and expressing.
So if you had one piece of advice to give to parents or caregivers of children during this time, which is 2021, what would that be?
Oh gosh, just one?
Well, you can share as much as you like.
Well, I think the key one is to, in some ways, to listen to what the child is saying with the ears of a child. This is one of the key things I do as a clinician, because I realize through play and through understanding, looking through the lens of the developmental play pyramid, I learn to listen to children beyond my adult language. And I'm aware that actually children tell you things all the time. It might be in the way they move, the things they seek, the things they avoid, the way they play, the way they sit. A lot of it's through metaphor. And even children who don't have language are telling you things all the time. But I think because of, as adults, we've been so conditioned into a verbal, highly cognitive world, we lose the language of childhood. And there's a lovely poem from the founder of Reggio Emilia, The 100 Languages of Childhood. And in many ways, what developmental play tries to do in our approach is to give us adults who've often lost the magic of play back some of that language, so that we can hear what children are saying. And I have, which you're most welcome to share, maybe I can give you a link to the blog. I wrote a little story about a child on lockdown called Lin on lockdown, and it outlines her play. It's written as a little story. You can see the way she's playing is telling you how she's feeling and how she's understanding her world. Because I think the greatest thing my children have taught me, and working with children, is that children are talking to us all the time. It's just in the language of play and not in our very verbal language. I did have a wonderful experience the other day, actually, when I was working with a child who does have good language, and I was trying to suggest for things to him to do, because I knew as an occupational therapist he might need to learn this and this. And he looked at me and he said, "Why are you doing all these things to me?" He said, "I've had an awful day as it is, and I just want to play." And I thought, out of the mouth of babes, this wonderful thing. And I could have hugged him, because I thought, yes, stop being such an adult, Caroline. Watch this child, what he's telling you through his, every time I tried to get him to do something that I thought would help him, feel stronger, he was getting, and then eventually he said it straight to me, and I thought, get rid of your adult brain, get down with the child, play with the child, listen to the child. That I think is probably my one bit of advice. Children communicate all the time, and our role is to listen with the right kind of ears and see with the right kind of eyes. And then we can be with them in the space where they need us to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which takes practice, getting into that headspace, and make sure that, well, for me personally, I need to practice mindfulness in order to get there. and make sure that all my needs are met when I am observing a child, because my needs can get in the way of what's really going on as well.
Exactly. And about being really reflective. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because in some ways, mindfulness is about us stopping racing ahead with all these thoughts, ideas, things that we've had put into our mind over the years, and actually stopping and being and listening.
Yeah.
And yeah. Because I do think a lot of children have to shout really hard because a lot of us aren't listening.
Yes.
Because we've been over-educated, we're overqualified, and we're not listening.
Yeah, I think there's a common phrase where you know, a child's attention seeking, and I think that when a child has gotten to that place where they're seeking attention, they're actually craving relationship, they're craving to be seen, and they may have tried different techniques, but we haven't seen it, we haven't noticed that they're trying to communicate in a particular way, because we're up here and we're thinking, you know, dinner, washing, work, etc. And so when a child is getting to that place and they are misbehaving or they're naughty, I really don't like those words, attention seeking, then to look at myself, to look at us as an adult and think, oh, this child's really craving relationship right now. What are they needing? What are they missing?
Yeah. And what am I not hearing?
What am I not hearing? Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I find it really helpful to say out loud, especially with a non-verbal child. Okay, so you've had your lunch, you had your nap, and go through it like, oh, how could, what are you missing right now? And most often it's that connection, that relationship. Yeah.
Well, again, there's some fascinating work about that whole thing you said about being seen, and that eye contact that, you know, you think about when you nurture a newborn baby. I see you. There's such intense eye contact, and engagement, and what we call attunement. And I was fascinated by a lot of the children who come and see me in my clinic, just want me to watch their play.
Yes.
And I was amazed why it was so powerful, because sometimes parents would say, what have you done? You know, it's like you've turned a switch on in my child. And I said, well, I've just let them play and watched them play and affirmed their play. And I was sort of a bit disconcerted. And I thought, why is it so powerful that seeing and watching a child playing, and then there was some research that came out from the Peddle Institute at the University of Cambridge, the Play Education Development and Learning Centre, about the neurobiology of eye contact and engagement. And it was a 4-month-old little baby who was being held by the mother. And when the mother sang to the baby and looked into the baby's eyes and sang a nursery rhyme, the EEG peaked. And you got lots of good electro responses in the brain. When the mother sang the same song, same baby, but looked 20, 30 degrees away and didn't make eye contact, maybe they were on the phone, the EEG dropped. I can't remember the exact statistics, but significantly below, I think it was up to 2/3. I mean, something just quite. And when I read this research, I suddenly thought, that makes so much sense. So what I'm doing by seeing a child and literally looking at them, and they check out my eyes, are you looking at me? Are you seeing me? I'm actually firing those neurons at a maximum level. And that's why change happens so fast. So, I mean, another bit of advice, I would say, see your child. Use seeing language, mirror them. This is all about mirror neurons, really, but engagement as well. So I think that seeing is really, really important.
It's quite simple when it's broken down. I mean, every human, whether you're 1 or 50, for someone to make eye contact and to really see you, is quite, it makes me feel amazing when someone really sees me.
Yeah.
It's
Do you remember in the Green Naveen, what's the Avatar? You know that movie with the big tree and how they say "I love you"? I mean, I've never forgotten it, because when they say "I love you," I think they link their tails under that amazing tree and they say "I see you." And love and being seen is so linked.
Yes. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. If anyone wants to find out more information or wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Well, we have a website, which is quite easy to remember. It's www.developmental-play.com.
Okay.
Or you can, through my name, I'm easy to find online. And then also my company website is www.CreateCATT.com. And then we have an academy. Oh, if anyone is interested, let me just show you this. We do have a little book, and I'm just about to put the Lin story. So this is a book which is on my academy called Fighting the Dragon, Finding the Self, Why Art and Play Matter in Early Childhood. And it's really about all the theory that underpins the developmental play pyramid and model. And it's dedicated to my children, who've been my greatest teachers. And it's full of lots of stories about why play matters. And I wrote it for parents and teachers here in Singapore to help them understand why art and play is important. And it's a very sort of practical, hands-on book for anyone in the early childhood sector. So you can find that, if you're interested, on the CreateCATT Academy.
Okay.
And it's a downloadable PDF book, but it's very much for parents. Any parents who bring a child to see me, I say, look, I recommend you read my book. It's much cheaper than talking to me, and you can find out all the things that I think will help you nurture your child in a creative, positive way. And it's the core textbook for our developmental play training. Okay. So we have an online certificate as well, which is approved by the World Federation of Occupational Therapists. It's a 100-hour certificate in the developmental play model. And all of that you can find out about on the website or on the academy.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Really nice to chat to you, and stay safe in New Zealand.
And you in Singapore.
Thank you.